Hi Cathy, welcome to the project. Thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us your name and a bit about yourself?
Sure. Cathy Dillon. I live in Cleveland. First moved to the Redlands in 1983, which seems like such a long time ago now, but feels like it was only yesterday. In 1983, I was in grade 3. So my dad was in the police force and we were actually transferred, he was transferred here from St. George. So it was coming to the big city. So I went to St. Anthony's primary school. There wasn't too many primary schools around at that point. I think Cleveland and St. Anthony's were the only ones in that sort of vicinity. So I went to St. Anthony's and I'd never seen so many kids in all my life. It was just huge. So, and then I went on to San Sisto, which was a carina. So I used to train it and bus it in there every day. Carmel College wasn't built then. So there was, and I think when I was in maybe grade 9 or grade 8, Alexandria Hills High went in. So, but we were Catholic. My brothers went to Iona. I went to San Sisto, finished year 12 and got into uni. Completely broke uni student all the time. So I took a part-time job at the Alex Hills Hotel, serving behind the bar while I was studying uni, and I was actually studying nursing. And I don't know if you remember, but back then, that was the early 90s, most of the nurses were striking, and I think there was an oversaturation. They weren't being paid very well. So I worked my way up behind the bar to bar supervisor, and then I started working in the restaurant and getting more and more responsibility. So they eventually offered me a restaurant supervisor shift, which was great because when I first started there, I was earning $100 a week and felt so broke. I think just going in 20 minutes before every shift and being the last one to leave, they saw that, I was putting in the hard yards. So I got offered more and more hours, and which was great. And then that ended up turning into an offer of restaurant manager, which was a full-time position. So towards the end of my second year of university, I decided to leave my nursing degree and take on that job because it was a lot more money than what I would have been paid as a nurse. And then a couple of months after I took that job, the functions coordinator job became available. So I ended up being 20 years old and having 18 staff, and I guess that was the first start of learning how to be responsible and have employees and treat them well, and that's hard for a 19, 20-year-old to do and coordinate everyone. But I did that position for a few years, and then when the Capella Bar Tavern was built, I went there and opened their restaurant as their restaurant manager. So I guess I was in hospitality for about 5 years when I left uni, and then got married really young, had babies pretty quickly as we did back then. So I was a mum at 24, and then and always stayed in the Redlands. So been in the Redlands since. It'd be very hard to leave the Redlands. I remember as a grade 6 student, I think his name was he was a local councillor, Councillor Bonnie. He came and spoke to us, and we were all these little kids sitting in the hall, and he was telling us about what's going to happen in Cleveland over the next 10, 15 years, and he was describing this harbour with all these restaurants, and we were all looking at each other going, I can't imagine that. But I live 100 metres from Cleveland Harbour now, and I use those restaurants probably 3 or 4 nights a week. And I remember as a little girl riding my bike through the canals. I think I was 12 when they dug out the canals before they filled them with water. We'd go, all the local kids would go and hang out in the canals and ride their bikes through the canals, and then they flooded them, and then with the water, and then we couldn't do it anymore, but that was always fun. But yeah, we decided we started our first business about 25 years ago, we got sick. But my husband was a duty manager in a hotel, and we just got sick of working weekends and having the family. It wasn't really conducive to a good family life, so we decided to, he loved gardening, he loved outdoors, he was working for a friend of ours part-time during the week, a builder, and he was doing landscaping for Main Road. So I put a $33 ad in the back of the Bayside Bulletin in the classifieds for makeover of gardens, and I remember the first job we got, it was at Wellington Point, and it was about $1,034, and we were so excited. We're like, oh, wow, we're in business. And so that's where our journey started with our company. Now 20 years on, that company turns over millions each year, but we started from scratch with nothing, with a wheelbarrow, and we actually found that wheelbarrow had a buckled, had a flat tire and a buckled wheel, and my husband got out the hammer and fixed it all up, and my dad gave us a crowbar and a shovel, and they helped us buy a $2,500 ute. And that was the start of the business. So we've come a little way from then. From there, I think we have probably between staff and 100 staff and contractors work for us full time now, and we employ, an office full of people at Capalaba. So our business is in the Redlands as well. So that's the journey to date with me and the Redlands and the business. And
so what is your business?
so we do pools and landscaping. So that's one of our companies. So we have Wahoo Pool and Landscape Construction. We do a lot of projects that are very large scale and have multiple layers of scope. So not just, we do a lot of very difficult projects. We tend to, we've got about 7 on the go in Raby Bay at the moment, where we're going in there and actually fixing up pools that are 35, 40 years old, or putting new pools in, or repairing revetment walls. We've done a lot on the Brisbane River and a lot of inner city work as well. So sort of large scale pool and landscaping projects, and out of the ordinary pools, like pools with wet edges and glass windows, and So that's one. Probably about 15 years into that company, I got a little bored, and I started. I had an interest in. The world is now flat. Yeah, it's like with globalization and everything. I had an interest in exporting products. So I actually export products out of Vietnam, China and Indonesia into America now. So I find America's the best market. I sell everything online over there. It works. There's 330 million people in America. There's 25 million in Australia. So the pool that I'm selling to over there is just so much more. So I do that, and I write software for the construction businesses as well, so it keeps me pretty busy. But there's always been opportunity and talk. We've always sort of thought of moving out of the Redlands, but I just don't think I ever could. It'd be very, very difficult. It kind of feels like home. Sometimes I call it Summer Bay, because that's what it feels like. And it's really, after living in the Redlands for like 35 years, it would be a very odd occasion if I walked down Bloomfield Street and didn't see someone I knew and stop and say hello to them. And so you just, even I'm still running into people I went to primary school with, and they're like me, they haven't moved out. But it's just, there's not that many places in Brisbane and Queensland that you can go to that has what we have down here. I mean, Cleveland Point is just stunning. It's just beautiful to go and sit down there and get some fish and chips on a Friday afternoon. I mean, we've got the luxury of the harbour and all those beautiful restaurants. We've got similar sort of setup at Victoria Point with Lakeside and the restaurants there. You know, it's just pretty. I just think Cleveland's so pretty, and it's, you know, good, and Wellington Point as well. So we're a bit spoiled, aren't we? And how cheap are our movies at Cineplex? So cheap,
yeah.
so cheap. Oh, we went to, we were up the North Coast not that long ago, and we went to another cinema up there. And I think what we get here for our family for like less than $30, we paid like $75 up there for 4 of us to go to the movies with popcorn and everything. So, yeah, we're so spoiled. Am I just rambling?
No,
please
no,
jump
you've been
in.
awesome. That's awesome. So, you had two children?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what was it like becoming a mum?
Do you know, when I first became, the first one came along really quickly, like 9 months to the day I got married. She was a little unexpected. And it was a little scary. She was born a little bit sick, actually. She was undiagnosed breech, and she ended up having to spend a couple of weeks in intensive care when I had her with meconium aspiration. And that was tough because you have this baby for 9 months that, you know, doesn't leave you, and then all of a sudden you have to leave hospital without your baby, and that was really hard. I was a young mum. I think I was just turned 24 when I had Paige, and a few years later April followed. So yeah, 2 girls. My husband has been pinked out for the last 21 years because that's how old Paige is. And they both went to Carmel College. I love being a mum. I love the fact that I'm kind of, it's a different generation. Like, I'm 45, and it's my generation, I think, of women that have come through as real workers. It was a big thing for my mum to go back to part-time work when I was in like year 8 or 9, I think she went back. And prior to that, women didn't work. So, or many women didn't work. So I love that my daughters have seen me as an independent working woman. And that's kind of encouraged them to go out and do and be the same. So, yeah.
So what's it like being married? Well, what makes marriage work? You've been married for quite a while, but also not only that, you have a business together as well.
I know. That is so, and it's really hard to explain to people, because in a normal situation, mum would go off to work and dad would go off to work, and then they'd come together at night and they would have things to talk about. What happened in your day? What happened in your day? Or, oh, so-and-so was a bugger at work today, or whatever it was, you know. But it's a really different situation when you kind of eat together, shop together, sleep together, work together, and you've done that for 20-something years. So, and I think that encouraged me to go off a few years ago and start other businesses. In the meantime, I've also bought and done up and sold a couple of cafes in the Redlands and things like that, just to sort of have some separation and go out and do I love trying different things, and I love wearing different hats, and I guess I always say to young women specifically, take risks when you're young, because you've got all these working years in front of you to make up for it if you don't succeed. And don't ever be afraid of failure, because from your failure will come your greatest successes. So I've always sort of lived by that notion, and I have I think I've bought and sold 5 businesses to date, and you know, I'm always looking for inspiration and to do. I'm just not a person who has sat on the sidelines of life watching a game play out. I've always wanted to be on the field and playing that game. So, yeah.
And so what's it like being a female in business? Have you ever had any challenges? Have you ever faced like tenders where in a male-dominated sector or anything like that, that being a female has worked against you or any of that sort of thing?
What's it like being a female in business? I guess being a female in business, but I've been a female in the construction industry, which has been tough at times. 20 years ago, I used to walk onto a construction site and I'd have the excavator operators and the concrete pumpies turn around and wolf whistle and completely degrade me. Now I walk onto a construction site and they know that I'm the one signing their paychecks, and they stop their machines, and I've really had to, it's been the school of hard knocks. I had to grow a very, very thick skin early on, working in a male-dominated industry, and to be taken seriously in that industry as well. So, it has been difficult, but it's been completely fulfilling and rewarding as well. And, I'm often on the phone, to the Queensland Master Builders Association and talking through changes that need to happen in contracts and things that aren't working and things that are working. I've, been asked to be keynote speakers at different events in the construction industry. So I'm finding now my age group, it's just joyous for me to see these young female apprentices now that are in their 20s and their 30s. As a 45-year-old in the industry, there's not many women my age that are actually in the construction industry and have been for, quarter of a century. So, but it's, the world is changing, and it's awesome to see so many young women come through and win Apprentice of the Year awards and things like that. It's fantastic. I love it.
So, having two girls, what is your biggest fear, I guess, for them growing up in today's society?
My biggest fear for them is that they won't have the confidence to try everything and anything. So, because I think that sometimes it's too easy to sit in the shadows and stay on the roundabout of life, I call it. It's much harder to line up to get onto the roller coaster. But it's not until you're on the roller coaster and trying different things and taking risks and having the confidence to step outside your bubble that, that's where the magic happens.
How do we build confidence into children and teenagers?
Education, school. But it's not just school. I think there's a lot of parents that rely on teachers too much to instill these foundations in their children, in our children. I think that it takes a village to raise a child sometimes, and I think that it's got to be a combination of school and parenting.
So exporting. So going out, you got bored, you wanted to do something else. How did you get to making that decision to do that? And what type of products are you using?
So we don't really, I sell on Amazon, and it's a very, it's a cutthroat sort of industry over there. I never ever disclose my actual products because it's a niche that if you find and you're good at it, you want to negate any sort of competition in that niche. But I sell, the products I sell are office products. I also sell outdoor leisure products. And I did a course. It's hard to find a business where you can not so much where you concentrate on turnover, but more so leftover, where you can there's not that many businesses out there where you can be guaranteed a 30% profit. But online sales in America is absolutely massive. I think Amazon is currently it's the number one it's currently sitting number one online retail sales out of any other website over there. Online sales, I think retail sales, 58% of retail sales in America is now online. Amazon is evolving so much over there that literally if you buy a product and it's under 3 kilos, they can drone it to your door within an hour. And the funny thing is, I think in 2017, there was 1.2 million new Seller Central accounts open, which is people who want to sell on Amazon. And it's much like, selling something on eBay or selling something on Gumtree. But out of that 1.2 million new accounts, only 2% went live with the product because the Seller Central interface is so difficult to navigate around and to use. So I actually did a course that took me 2.5 years to learn how to do it. And so that's why I'm selling on Amazon now, and it's just so, I'm earning American dollars. I go to bed at night and I wake up in the morning and I've made money sleeping. And there's not many jobs that where that happens. So, yeah.
So what type of things inspire you? What are you looking for now?
What inspires me? Do you know, every day I feel very, very blessed in life anyway. I feel I just have this natural passion for life. I love hearing people's stories. I love I'm the sort of person that has always, and I guess it's kind of, tall poppy syndrome only exists in Australia. It really does. Most Australians will see someone who's doing a little bit better than them or have a little bit more, drive a better car, kids are more talented, and they kind of want to pull them down. I've just always been that person that if someone is kicking goals in life, I want to go up and meet them and go, why is this working for you? What are you doing? And I've just always tried to associate myself with people who are loving life, kicking goals in life, and aligning myself with them. And it's just infectious. Like the positive vibes just tend to rub off. And I wish more people would be like that, because life's not fun walking around with a chip on your shoulder.
So in the Redlands, do you attend any sort of meetings, events, networks? How do you connect with people like that?
Yeah, I used to. I don't anymore. With my business groups, I have mastermind groups where there might be 5 or 6 of us in a group, and we touch base through Zoom calls and that every 2 weeks actually. So I put myself into groups with other business people, and we throw ideas around and get advice and get inspiration off each other. And I'm in a group with a cardiothoracic surgeon, an engineer, a miner. So it's like this diverse group of business people that come together, and we chat, and yeah.
Awesome. Your favourite place in the Redlands?
What's my favourite place in the Redlands? 4 times a week I walk. It's a 10k round walk to Cleveland Point, and if you get there and it's high tide or close to high tide as you're walking along Shore Street North, and at the right time of the day, the sun sort of glimmers off the water, and I seriously think to myself every time I see it, there is nothing man-made or anything else in the world that could be as pretty as that. No diamond, no piece of jewelry, no magnificent house. It's just like the sun on that water with Stradbroke in the background. It like just It dazzles. It's just beautiful, and it's so therapeutic. And you walk along there and you walk back and you look at it and you just feel like so blessed, so happy. That it's really such a beautiful spot of the world, isn't it? A couple of times I've done that walk and I've looked around and I haven't, and it's rare because Cleveland Point's becoming more and more popular, and I haven't seen another person in sight, and I'm like, I've got all of this to myself at the moment. This is pretty special. So no, it's beautiful. That would be my favourite spot.
And what advice would you give other women in their 40s who might only just discover the zest for life?
Well, 40 isn't old. You are really just probably hitting half time in your football match. So you've got plenty of time to go and plenty of time to turn things around. Yeah, look, it's never too late. And I think too, almost that it's perfect timing in your 40s, because your children, a lot of women out there, their children are hitting in their 40s, they're hitting their teens, and they're not so reliant on mum. So that gives mum the more headspace at that point of time in their life to maybe start thinking outside the box they've been in. So I think that it's almost a pivotal time in women in their 40s to make some changes and to start thinking, what else could there be out there for me? What could I do? And of course, when you are in your 40s, you have like 20 years of life experience as being an adult. So you have such a firmer foundation as a jumping point. I can't tell you how many times I've failed at things when I've tried to do things in my mid to late 20s and 30s, and things that were catastrophic for me back then happen to me now, and it's like, I've been there, I've done that, I didn't die, and it's not so bad.
So flipping cafes, or buying and selling,
yes,
how did that come about?
I think from my earlier years as a restaurant and functions manager for the Maguire Hotel Group, always had a passion for hospitality and service. I think service-driven systems, I'm a little OCD, they kind of excite me. I was bored a few years ago, and I remember when the cafe went in behind the Cleveland Library, and I used to go there with my babies and get, grab a coffee before I'd go into the library, and I used to love that cafe. And I think it was Mark who owned it way back then in the late 90s, and it was Sugar and Spice. And then had a series of subsequent owners, and I think it was a sushi bar at one point, and then it was a Thai restaurant, and there was a fire there, and I always looked at it and I thought, gosh, that's got so much potential. So about 5 years ago I bought it, shut it down for 3 months, completely renovated it, put 3 chefs in there, brand new team of staff, modernised it, brand new menu, fittings, everything, and opened it up. And literally within 6 weeks, I think when I bought it, it was its biggest week in the last month. It turned over like $2,800 in a week, and within like 8 weeks I had it up to like 20,000 turnover, and there was a lineup every Saturday and Sunday out the door, and I had a 3-year plan for it. And after 10 months I got a cash contract put in front of me. Someone wanted to buy it, and so I sold it. And it was, but it's hard work because it's 7 days a week, and I didn't want to sell it at the time, and my husband went, come on, what are you doing? So I sold it. But yeah, it was fun. It's fun. I like doing things like that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I could probably talk forever, but no, if there's anything else you need from me.
I'm trying to think if there's any gold I'm missing, because it's all gold, but what's the hardest thing that's happened in your life?
Okay, so the hardest thing that's happened in my life is we bought, when I was 29, 30, we bought a nursery. So we had the landscape company that was doing really, really well, and it's a bit of an iconic nursery, or it used to be an iconic nursery in the Redlands. It used to be called King Country Nursery on Dinwoody Road, and that came up for sale, freehold, and some really good friends, and I'm glad to say they're still beautiful, good friends of ours, and my husband and I decided to buy it. And we went in there and we spent probably $500,000 rejuvenating it. We changed the name to King Country Harmony House and Gardens. I remember as a little girl going in there and dancing through the rainforest, and I loved it. I thought it was just a magical place. So we went in there, we did it up, put a homeware store in there, redid the cafe. I leased an area out to the pot man. I had weddings again in every weekend booked out in the rainforest. We did yoga in the rainforest 3 mornings a week. And for the first 8 weeks, it was just running perfectly. And then level 2 water restrictions were introduced into the Redlands, and people weren't allowed to wash their cars, water their gardens, and overnight people stopped walking through the door. And then that happened within a month. Level 2 water restrictions came in, and my mum got breast cancer. So it was a tough time. So we sort of limped along with that business for about 6 months, and in the end we sold it. But we took, between the 4 of us, we took a $1 million loss on that business. But it didn't. So at the time it was, oh my goodness, we're 30 years old, we had to sell our houses. It was really tough. But actually looking back now, 15 years later, I kind of think it was a bit of a blessing, because I learnt so much in losing $1 million. Not many people think that, I know that sounds a bit crazy, but it kind of gave me the drive to continue with business and just, try until I was successful in future businesses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't want to live my life after that with the woe is me attitude. I wanted to, turn that around and, from that lesson, kick some goals in the future.
Where did you get that mindset from? Who in your life?
I don't think it was so much who in my life. I think that growing up, my parents, they're in their mid-60s now, and if you talk to anyone in their mid-60s, they will tell you it was tough during the 80s, 17% interest rates. There was a lot of families out there that were doing it really, really tough. We've never, in my generation, I've never experienced it. I mean, what are we now, like 2% or something? We've never had to live through that. The financial stress on families back then was really tough. I remember that for lunch, if I was lucky, I took a fish paste sandwich and a 2-week-old apple. And I walked 2 kilometres to the Cleveland train station when just after the Cleveland train, the line came from Thornside to Wellington Point, and then about a year later, I think it went to Cleveland. And I remember having to walk the 2K either way to catch the train to school. And so I think having nothing, growing up and having nothing, is incentive to learn really quickly later on how to create something in your life and make it work. So usually when you know what nothing feels like, you tend to develop skills in life to make sure that you don't go back there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the project.
problem.
It was absolutely wonderful to hear your story.
No worries. Thanks for having me.